First of all, I just want to welcome you and kind of get a feel for who you guys are. They had given me the sign-in sheet, so I kind of could see what businesses you were in and that type of thing. But one of the first things that I'd love to do is if you will just flip your material over to the back, you'll see right at the top, my goal for today. What is what is it that you want to walk out of here with and say like, hey, that was a good use of my time. Like they fed me some good food and I learned X. What is it that you want to walk away from today? It's very possible we may not be able to cover everything that you guys wrote down today. And at the end of the class though, I am gonna encourage you to go back to what you wrote at the beginning and see if we've accomplished that. So I would love to have a few of you brave souls share with me what you wrote down.
Where do you see yourself with this company? And I was like, I would like to walk away from this class with the knowledge of how to ask the challenging questions such as, where do you see yourself with this company?
Okay, so how to ask challenging questions. Okay, that's actually a pretty good one because it's not just asking the questions, it's making sure, and many of you guys have been doing this for a long time, but asking the question and giving them opportunity to share, and then what can you pick up from what they said or didn't say or how they said it, like there's those intricacies behind there. Okay, awesome. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I am just interested in how to hire the right people and then maintain the right people.
Ooh.
Yes, to keep them.
Yes. Anybody else have that challenge? Like maybe you feel like you hired somebody awesome and then you're like, either they weren't as awesome as you thought or you weren't able to retain them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I kind of come at it from before coming to HMB. I've only been there for 9 months, and I was in a university career services type role for 9 years, and so there was a place for everyone. Like it was all about like loving on everyone and finding their place and finding their strengths. And now I'm in a talent acquisition role, and that's not my goal. Is to find a place for everyone.
Yes.
There's only so many seats at our table, and you have to be good to get at our table. And so better screening candidates so that I'm not wasting hiring managers' time. That's probably my biggest insecurity is I love everyone, and that's not what I should be doing. I should be being selective.
Yeah. Well, and to challenge it a bit, I think keep loving everybody and being selective, because what you might even discover is, hey, you know what? You're amazing. You don't actually want to work here because you'd be miserable. And hey, I know some other folks that I'd love to connect you with, because there's no telling where that will end up later, but then you get to keep loving them because sometimes it's hard to change our personality that much. Yeah, okay. Who else? Somebody that has something beyond, because this is going to be the screening, right? So that we're not talking to everybody, just the narrowing them down. This is going to be, okay, how do we train and keep, and then, this is almost and I'm going to say this is not just the interview process. This is also your daily and our weekly meetings, depending on that role, because human nature, right? We all ask the question, so how are you doing? What did we all say? Good. Fine. And it's just a script, right? Like you could have just knock on wood, but your mom could have just died and somebody asked you that's not your family, oh, fine. Good. We have that, we can run into that same challenge when we're talking to people that work for us or work with us because we don't know how to get deeper. I was actually listening to a podcast the other day and they brought a very interesting point up. I'm not saying that we should go back to olden times, and yet back in the day, women went to finishing school to learn conversation and how to interact with people. Men went to, so that's some of what we're having to learn now in these roles is how do we have that deeper conversation with somebody so that we can get to not just what they're saying, but what's behind what they're saying. And how many of you guys have ever had, maybe you're in a conversation with an employee or somebody you work with or work for, and you know that something's not right, but you're not sure how to call that out. So I'll give you this nugget, and you guys, if you have a nugget like this, please share with us. But one good nugget is if you have that, it's just the vibe seems to be off a little bit. It's okay to say, we're going to use Jaden as an example. So I'm going to say, hey, Jaden, I may be completely wrong, you seem like your energy's a little different today. And he's either going to go, oh, no, I was thinking about something. And I was, no, like I'm good. And you can tell by how he answers if he's, and I hate to use the word truth because people could be telling the truth, but more of like they don't want to bother you or whatever, being vulnerable. Or if he's like, I can't believe you picked up on that. Like so-and-so just happened. Oh, I hate to hear that. Now we get to have a real conversation. So that's a real good one of just, because sometimes you're completely wrong, but if you feel that is off, that's a great one. Anybody else have one like that they use when things feel a little bit, but you don't know how to put your finger on it? I bet you guys will think of something. Okay, so any of these, anything else that you'd like to see us cover today? Yes, ma'am.
Just to see if there's any way for us to enhance like our recruiting techniques. I feel like that's something that we struggle most with is we don't, depending on the different markets, we don't get a large amount of applicants, and then the applicants we do get aren't really qualified and things like that, and I'm sure a lot of people struggle with that.
Okay. And anybody else struggle with that piece of just recruiting, getting the talent? Okay. Do you mind if I ask, what are you guys doing right now?
We have it posted on our website, and then we do Indeed, and that's literally it right now.
Okay.
It's very low-key, I would say.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to actually cover some of that today that may help. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say, I came in late, I'm sorry. I'm Kelly, and I work for ULM. I'm the Director of Employer Relations.
Okay,
I
nice.
don't know if y'all introduce yourself.
Yeah.
But we're having a bunch of fall career days coming up.
Yes.
Great place to get some new hires.
And she may, so I'm going to say this, and then she might go, no, don't talk to me about that. She may also be a great place. A lot of times, the college may need people to come in like with real world experience to like talk to a class and say, hey, this is what, well, make sure you're on her list, because part of it is, and we're going to talk about this a little bit today, but part of it is we just don't know enough people. People don't know to find us. And if I haven't talked to you or can't see you, then I don't know that you might be the right person for me. And then we talk a lot about building your bench. Let's say that that you meet somebody amazing. They're loving their role. Maybe you know that eventually you'll have that role in your business. Write them down. Keep them in like your mind, because in 2-3 years or whatever that time frame is, you go, hey, let me go back and see if she's looking for another opportunity, or if he is. And so making sure, but that could be a great possibility. So is that something that, would they talk to you maybe about that? Okay, so we're making some connections. Okay, perfect. Okay, anything else that you'd like to you'd like to walk out of here today with? Okay. I believe we should be able to get that done in the amount of time that we've got today. So this is a little bit about who we are. The good thing is today is about you guys, so feel free to read that over, and it'll give you a little bit of information about myself as well, and some programs that we offer. But this is about you guys today, so we're going to jump straight into today's agenda. So what we're going to be looking at is the 4 types of hires, and maybe even a little bit differently of how you guys are going to look at that. We're going to look at the right time to hire, attracting and prospecting for top talent. So that was some of the questions that you guys had. And multi-generational leadership. How many of you, show of hands, so you don't have to tell me exactly, but how many of you are, I don't think, we don't have anybody in her boomer era. What about Gen Z? Millennial? Okay. You will when you walk out. And the reason that that's going to be important is, like, how many of you guys, when you hire somebody or you're thinking about hiring them, y'all do some type of behavioral assessment? Okay. So that's a piece of it. How you grew up is a piece of it. And we're going to talk about, like, if you're leading somebody that is a boomer or a Generation X or a millennial, are the ones that are coming up, they're like 20, the 12 to 27, right? Those are the ones that are entering the workforce. What do they look for? How do we manage them? How do we inspire them? How do we lead them? So we'll touch on that a little bit today. And when we go through that, I know for me at least, as I was reading, I was like, that doesn't apply. Wow, that does. And so we'll kind of get a feel for that way to make sure as leaders that it's easier or maybe simpler, let's say easier, to just be like, oh, and that's the other reason I start telling I'm old. Man, them younger kids today, they don't have, and I'm like, oh, that's it. Like anytime you start complaining about the younger generation, but even the older generation. And so how do we help, like, typically boomers, they like to mentor. Well, are we putting them potentially with our Generation X or millennials so that they're getting the wisdom from the millennials and maybe they're helping the tech with the boomers? Though with that said, a lot of boomers, I think we forget, like my mom's 74, 75 this month. She's on Facebook. She's, she knows, she got the computer. I mean, so like a lot of them are lifelong learners. So sometimes we may be surprised by what they know versus just assuming that, oh, they don't know tech. Very possible that they are really good at tech if we give them a chance. So those are going to be the pieces. And of course, okay, now we've hired. What do we do now? How do we ensure that they want to stay, that they are bringing great value to us, the team, and we'll bring in great value to them. And then we're going to do a Q&A at the end. So that is what today is going to look like. Because the biggest thing is how are we making sure that we're setting them up for success? So on that note, actually I've got one more questions for you guys, and then we're going to go ahead and grab food, and then we'll come back in and get started. How many of you guys are looking to hire for sales? How many of you guys are looking to hire for like admin type? And then so you're with admin type for the admin to the accountant, okay? And then how many, so like if you're hiring tellers, what do you guys consider them? Like if they're not sales, they're not admin.
Frontline customer service.
Customer service, okay. Anybody else? Anything else? So now frontline customer service, you're looking for people are you looking for manager types or to work their way into it?
I do have a manager types, but also when we hire like our like cashiers at the back of the house or whatever, we need to know how to kind of pinpoint them without wasting our time, their time, and our energy,
Yes.
and our money on something that's not going to be worth it.
Yeah, finding out up front, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess mine would be sales, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
a lot, because in a lot of it, even regardless of, right, it's a little bit of sales, a little bit of admin, because the reason that I'm asking those questions is because this is the other thing that I've seen with hires, and I'm sure many of you have seen that, is somebody like they want all these things in this person. That would be like, and excuse me, I don't know that there's probably a much politer way to say this. I just haven't been able to. There's a song that's called Pimps and Preachers. And I think sometimes when you're trying to get like somebody that's a telemarketer and very detail oriented, it's kind of like getting those in the same body. It shouldn't work, right? Like we don't, and so it's kind of the same situation. So we have to make sure that we have the right job description for that behavioral style of what we're looking for, or we get disappointed, they're disappointed, and we're just setting everybody up for failure. So we're gonna look at that a bit too, okay? Did I miss anything?
I'm more marketing communications.
Okay. You're looking for that marketing
Usually
person.
For me, company-wide, we do
Okay.
a mix of everything.
Okay.
It's just marketing communications.
Okay, perfect.
A lot of ours are just staff members, like
Staff.
auditors or tax staff.
Okay, and perfect. Now, how many of you guys have written job descriptions for the people that you're hiring? Okay, when was the last time you looked at that written job description? Good. Okay. Look, y'all are already winning. Because a lot of times, like 15 years ago, or like whatever, you're like, does it even apply? Is that correct? So, okay, perfect. Okay. All right. So we're gonna let's go ahead and grab some lunch. We'll come back in and we'll just dive right in. And I believe you're going to be able to go through that door right there. And I'm going to go ahead. Let's say, will somebody give me the time? 11:20. So let's say that in case you guys need to return a call or anything, we're going to start back at 11:35. Okay, and of course you can be eating while you're in here as well. All right, go grab lunch, and then we'll see you back at 11:35. Okay, so first we want to look at when to hire. Now, most of you guys, this, based on what you guys are telling me, this doesn't apply all the way to most of you guys because you know that you're looking for people right now, right? So I'm actually going to move forward and then I'm going to come back to that piece. That way, yeah, I'm going to move forward and then we're going to come back to that. I'm going to look at the 4 types of hires really quickly though. Now, this is going to be interesting because I want you to think in how I share this, but I want you to think in terms of your business, how this applies, okay? So when we look at, can everybody see this? Okay. When we think about the type of hires, a lot of times when we've done all that we can do, we go, okay, well, maybe I need an EA, or maybe I need a salesperson, or maybe depending on what type of business that you're in. And yet, whenever we look at those 4 type of hires, so we're looking at this differently. I want to imagine this is you, right? The 4 type of hires, and I didn't number the pages, but it looks like this. It is the person that we typically think, right, the person that works for me. Maybe they're taking things off my plate. And we typically think, especially now more like a small business owners, they're going to think, okay, hey, I need that next person that works for me. Then, but I want you to think of it this way. It might be, who's that person that you need to partner with? We don't always think about that as a hire, but let's say that you are a small business and owner and you're like, hey, based on where I am, where that person is, I want to merge. I want to partner with them. So that's a type of hire. Then you have, maybe it's a coach. Maybe you're like, hey, I want to get to there. I want to have help from here to here. How can you help me get there? This is a little bit more intense and you have all types of different ways to make that happen with your coach. But sometimes that's the missing hire. Because like, I'm going to go to training and then how do I help? How do I implement those pieces? And then some of you've done this, right? This is who you're going to work for, right? So I don't know how many of you guys thought about it, but right, like if you're working for a bank, you don't own that, you decided who to go into business with, right? For ULM, so just like you vetted them, right? You want to make sure that you're vetting these other people as well. So we want to be thinking about the 4 types of hire. So that person that works for you, with you, that coaches you, or that you work with. Now, again, everybody in here is in a little bit of a different spot. But let's say that, I'll use, who will be my guinea pig for the class? Okay. So right now, Daniel, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you looking to make hires in your role yet, or that's where you want to go?
That is where I want to be, the supervisor area. The plan is to be a commercial banker.
Okay.
But as of now, I know we're looking for new tellers for a West Monroe's location.
Okay. Okay. All right. So if this is you, right, and you're looking for additional tellers, you would go, okay, I've decided to work for this company. Sometimes it might be, okay, if you're in this role, okay, if I'm hiring for tellers, and like I'm the supervisor, I'm hiring for tellers, what are the behavioral, the traits, the hours, et cetera, that I'm looking for? Because that's the other thing is when we look at job descriptions, sometimes what happens is we hire for the wrong role. Like we've always hired for this role, so that's the role that we think that we need. And it might be that you need a different type of role. So for instance, like you mentioned hiring, you mentioned hiring admin. Isn't that the perfect time? You mentioned hiring for admin. It's probably admin, right? Y'all have done, but just using that as an example, you might go, okay, let me go interview, and because that's your job, let me go interview the different people in the company and what they think they need. And you might discover that they think they need an admin, but really they need a salesperson. Or they actually do really good at the admin work, but this other piece is what they need to be hired for. So sometimes we hire wrong, and that's why we have the turnover, because what we think we want and what we actually need may be two different things. So I'll look at your business with our managing. All I can think of is chicken salad, because I want chicken salad now. But you're managing that. A lot of times you may go, and again, this is just depending on where you guys are in this, but what you might discover that maybe you're having turnover or you can't hire the right person is because there may be some duties of yours that you need to offload. And if you're in a business like that, a lot of times you don't think, oh, you know what I actually might need before I need the teller is I actually need somebody that is, whether it's part-time, full-time, because depending on, everything else, but I actually need somebody that I can offload these things to so that I can focus on these things. And then by doing that, that's going to leave me more time to train and motivate and inspire and hire. So that's the biggest piece, is just look at this. And of course, everybody's business is different. And yet, are you clear on, if you're in the hiring seat, are you clear that the person you're hiring for is clear about what they want and what that looks like? Because that can also be, that's probably one of the most challenging positions, because if you're hiring for what somebody else wants, and if they want the wrong thing, then you hire somebody for them, and then they're like, well, that's the wrong fit. Well, we got to spend some time together maybe and find out what you're actually looking for, and is that actually, like, I know that a lot of times we are looking for unicorns because we want that person that's amazing, and I think that's fair and we should, but are we asking for something that's not just not, there's nobody that would fit that, right? And so that might be some of you guys is going, okay, if I'm hiring for that person, how do I make sure that we're really clear that this is actually who they want, who they need, and do they have the skills to train them, even if, how many of you guys have people that you're hiring for and they're not part of the hiring conversation? Meaning that person that you're hiring, they never talk to the person that they're going to report to. Okay, so that's the first, number one. So y'all all have them involved in some way. Okay, perfect. That's awesome. Because that can be a huge disconnect as well. How clear are you on that they know their role really well and what they need to be looking for, and how clear they need to be with the person that they're hiring and then the training after they hire them? Like, have y'all had those conversations and asked them in-depth questions about what that looks like?
I think sometimes the hiring manager knows exactly what they're looking for, but they don't communicate that to me. And there's so many roles within the organization, it's hard to know every ideal candidate profile for an admin to a bookkeeper to a tax staff. Like, they're all different. Yeah. And so it's hard to get the hiring manager to slow down and say, hey, I need to know what you're looking for, because I can't find candidates and screen candidates adequately if we don't have that. If I don't know what you're looking for. Yeah. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about that, but again, everything that I show you today, I want you to think of it in terms of your organization. So I'm gonna show you some things that you're gonna be like, oh, we have that and ours is better. That's great. You're gonna have some things you're like, oh, we don't have that and we need that, right? And then it may just be the different way of looking at things that when we start looking at hiring people. So we've got the 4 types of hire. So who is it that so one of the things that I would ask you guys to write down right now is, if you, through thinking about the different 4 types of hires, if you've been looking for the wrong person or you think you might be, write that down. So if you're like, oh, you know what, I might need an admin instead, or I might need a runner, that might be our missing. So if it's somebody missing that you think you haven't thought about before, go ahead and write that down. So that's going to give you an opportunity to go back and look at that toward the end of the day. Now, on here, you're going to see the hiring process. I'm actually going to show you guys, and again, everybody has different software and a different ability to do this. I'm going to show you this through an Excel program just because that's the easiest way to share it. But I want us to think about
This piece, okay. Okay, so hiring steps, and this is what why didn't that change? Yay, okay. Okay, so hiring steps. So most of y'all mentioned that you have a job description for every hire that you're looking to make. If you don't have a written job description, I would highly recommend getting one. This is just actually, I'm gonna talk about that, but I would highly recommend that. But something that I found that works really well for some of the people that I work with is writing the offer letter up front. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to change the offer letter or anything, but that gets us really clear on who we're hiring and is that a right fit for the job? And does it work for our budget? So I'm a big fan of actually starting off with that offer letter, especially let's say that you are, maybe you don't have all of your systems in place yet. It sounds like a lot of you guys do, but if you don't, this would give you an opportunity with each role that you're looking to hire for. Okay, what's the compensation? What's the benefits? What are the hours that we want them to work? Is it salary? Is it base? Is there bonuses? What's the compensation options? Are we doing a good job of communicating those pieces? So I'd like to go ahead and start there. How many of you guys, now these are, when we talk about getting resumes, how many of you guys, like you mentioned Indeed, how many of you guys are using like an Indeed or one of the companies that you, like they'll help you build the job application and then they just put it, blast it on all of the different hiring websites? How many of you guys are using something like that?
We use Paylocity.
Paylocity, anybody use something different?
We use Paycor.
What was that?
We use Paycor.
Paycor, Paylocity, so if you guys need those. So some of the things that I'm gonna share with today, those systems will do this, okay? There's a few things though that I'm gonna suggest that you might do backwards or different. One of the things that we're seeing with a lot of people, how many of you guys have been in your job role for maybe like less than a year? Or working for this company that you're working for now for less than a year? Less than 2 years? Okay. So this will probably land more so with you guys. How many of you guys, when you were putting in applications, you put in a lot of applications, you had everybody ask you to do like jump through 15 hoops, and then before you even knew if there was gonna be an interview? And we do want some jump through hoops, don't get me wrong. And sometimes what happens, two things. Sometimes we ask them to jump through too many hoops at the beginning. Sometimes we don't ask them to jump through enough. And sometimes we give too much information about the job, and then other times we give too little. So it's like, how do you know the difference? Because if you give too much, somebody that may be extremely qualified reads all of that and goes, oh, I don't know how to do that one thing. And so they don't apply. Then you have that person that, you don't give enough and they're like, oh yeah, I can do that. And you're like, dude, you don't know how to turn on a computer. You can't do this job, right? So making sure that you're finding that balance is gonna be huge. So again, some of these things you guys have programs to do it. If you don't, I would highly recommend it. Unless you have somebody like, this is their only thing, and even then, you definitely don't, you wanna, time is money. Where are you using the best use of your time? One thing I am gonna suggest though, because we're gonna talk about a lot of the best talent already has a job. So they're not on Indeed or any of the job ads. So do we want them on there? Absolutely. And where else? So one of the things that I typically suggest, and I know this is, again, depending on your company if they'll allow this, but I like to have a specific email just for applications. That way it doesn't get in, it's not eating up my box. And let's say that Connor here, let's say that Connor's got a job, I want to recruit Connor. sending him the ad to LinkedIn may not be my best move, especially if he's happy where he is, right? So that's why I like to have that other one that the resumes can come into. It does, I can just check it periodically. And then of course, Indeed or some of those companies that feed. If you're part of the person that is deciding how you pay, look at the different types of compensation. Because most of us, right, you have salary. Let me pull, I've got this up right here. So these are some like 9 major compensation options, but salary, is it salary, commission, what expenses are you paying, bonuses, profit share, is there retirement plans, insurance benefits, PTO, sick leave, equity opportunities. And sometimes with equity opportunities doesn't have to be in the same field. So this is probably going to be more for like the smaller business owners. But I'll use an example. I've got one client, the person that works for him, like certain jobs, that's all they pay, right? Like there is, even if you're on the very high end of that job has a limit. Well, so what he actually does is they then, the ones that, not everybody, but outstanding employees, he has set up so like they may, once they get to a certain, maybe they buy a house together and they get to earn equity. And so they're getting a bonus because they're getting an opportunity to own real estate that they may not have got the opportunity in that role. So it could be outside of that role, that traditional role as well, to figure out how we can provide them other opportunities. So keep that in mind as well. This is something, if you guys want it, you can Google it, but I put this one together so we can get this to you if you guys want to read through it. It kind of just breaks each one of these down.
I have a
Yeah,
comment.
absolutely.
So, as someone who's been on Indeed and looking for jobs at certain times, and I'm working with a lot of college students and recent college graduates, Indeed has a lot of fake job posts. So I don't look at Indeed if I'm looking for a job, and I know a lot of my students don't. We have our own, most colleges have their own job search platforms, and in Louisiana we use something called Handshake. Do y'all know about Handshake? Okay. So before we leave, if y'all are not on Handshake for ULM, let me know so we can get you connected and you can post jobs there through us, and I will email them to all our students.
That right there was worth the price of admission, yeah? Thank you. You just made my class look good. So that's where we talk about the word of mouth and to ask for where's the best place, because I agree. Like there's a lot of times there's fake, and then again with Indeed, and there's so many hiring platforms now. And again, I do suggest that we use them. We just have to make sure that that's not the only thing that we use. And when we use them, how do we make sure that ours shows up where it looks legit and that type of thing. So I love that. And then, okay, so the other piece, there is a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. It's not about agents, it's just about growing a business. There's a piece in there that I actually recommend everybody to read, because when we look at hiring, do we have a model that we're utilizing to hire? Do we have a system that we're using, not just when we hire them, but then to train them? And then we want to use systems to define, train, and consult to refine. So a lot of times that's the other thing is we hire somebody and we're like, oh, they're not doing what they're supposed to be, or I'm having to train them, or, and obviously we should all train people. But there are certain things, if I'm hiring for, let's take, I'm hiring a counselor. My expectation, while we can all get better at what we do, but my expectation's probably not gonna have to like train them on, I'm gonna now train them on how we operate and our systems, not on how to talk to a person, right? So that's where we look at, for whatever role that is, do they have the talent for the role, and then we're just refining. So a lot of times, again, this happens a lot of times with like smaller companies or your first hires. You hire somebody out of need, and then you look up and you're like, how many of you guys have ever hired somebody and then didn't feel comfortable at all letting them do anything. Just me? Odds are, because I'll even have people that, well, yeah, I'm a control freak. Yeah, you could be, but really for the right person, you're not. When you feel that way, now again, I'm not saying every time, but a lot of times it's because it's not the right person. Like I recently helped a company hire, and it was very interesting because they went from, it's going to take us 6 months even to teach them how to answer the phone. It's not the right person. Now, do they have to learn your systems and all? Sure. But within a week, she had already learned several of the systems, and she was like, well, I feel fine. Like she still needs to learn this. I'm like, absolutely. Do they need to understand how to book the appointment and things to that effect? But if you don't trust them enough to say, hey, thanks for calling, company name, we got a problem, right? Like, now, interesting enough, depending on generation, that, like how many of you guys use your phone mainly just to text? Yeah, okay. I won't put you on the spot with your age, but younger folks, right? Like, so older boomers, but Gen Z and even millennials, the older millennials, we tend to think in communication to fix problems. The younger we are, we tend to, how can we fix that with tech? Neither one of them are necessarily wrong, but there may be a combination. So who are we asking to do what, and how are we bringing that in? Yes, ma'am.
So speaking of text, because I work with college students, how many of y'all in HR confirm or book interviews via text?
I started doing it
Mm-hmm.
because
They don't check their emails.
They don't check emails.
So if y'all are sending emails to offer interviews and to confirm interviews or to follow up about interviewing or anything at all, they don't check their email.
Yeah.
It's information overload.
It was something that was never done before at the firm
Yeah.
that I was at, and I could tell whenever I first was like, hey, I'm gonna start texting candidates, they're like, I don't know. But
Yeah.
We
That's-
email. They
Yeah.
email.
Well, and even us, think of it this way. How many of you guys, how many people email you if it's not a work thing? Sometimes, but probably very rare, right? So, and again, again, email can be a good thing. And I love that you mentioned that, because it does, are you texting? Social media, one of and this is maybe for somebody that's in sales, but one of the best things that you can do on Facebook, if you're like people that post on Facebook and things like that, if you want to message them through, and I say Facebook, but now see, that's and younger people, by the way, if you look at we tend to think younger people aren't on Facebook, but they are. So we won't go into that today, but I was very surprised by the numbers. But you might, the Instagram or whatever, a lot of times if you message people that way, you will get a faster response than if you email. So just thought. But yeah, so texting, are we doing texting? And make sure, texting is not a 6-page conversation. Now we look at the job descriptions. Now, this is probably one of my least favorite job descriptions. How many of your job descriptions kind of look like this? Okay. Now again, not wrong, or it's just like, is it effective or not? So how many of you guys like to read? We're kind of in an instant society, and does it really tell me? How much does it tell me? Now, it is great to know who you are as a company, but I kind of expect if somebody to do their due diligence, and they're going to hopefully Google me, right, or my company prior to. But I'm going to read a couple of things to you, because I want you to go back and just look at yours and see if that they look like this, because you might need to have, and a lot of people will have like this is the company purposes or whatever, and then this is what this means on a day-to-day type thing. So, because if I were to say, hey, I'm looking to hire somebody to build, implement, and manage all the systems for sellers, buyers, lead generation, database management, information management, back office support, can you do that? Well, yeah, sure, right? It depends, but still doesn't quite tell me what that means on like a day-to-day. And so I want just be thinking about, make sure that we're not, it's almost like, how many of you guys have ever had somebody, any lawyers in here? Okay. You've read lawyer documents though. It's almost like reading the Bible, like, it's thou and nevertheless and the aforementioned person. A lot of these read like that. And so how do you break it down and go, okay, what is legit that I want this to say? What am I legit telling people that I'm looking for? So at the end of the day, I will go back up and pull up an example. And I didn't tee it up, so I don't want to take the time to find it. But before we, at the end, I'm going to pull one up that's kind of more of a basic one to let you guys look at. But just go back and look at these and go like, and it's not about dumbing it down. It's just about being simple. Like, what is it, the straightest path? What is it that we're actually meaning? And then I think, to me anyways, this is really good for you to help figure out the role. And then how would we articulate that to somebody outside of the company? And so maybe those are the two. And then of course, what's the compensation, salary, benefits, any bonuses, that type of thing. So again, having that prior to, and it sounds like you guys do, it may just be an opportunity. Now talking about social media. So you had mentioned earlier today that y'all typically run Indeed, and how many of you guys are telling the story? So social media. Now would you, and making them interesting, right? So typically this is an ad that will run executive assistant, what should you be full-time? Is it an in-office position? Is it flexible? Those all things really matter as well when it's an opportunity. Is it an entry-level position or is it not? But typically, when we do that, are you using memes? Are you using funny pictures? When we use this one, we got Lionel Richie. Is it me? Is it me you're looking for? But then I go, okay, wow, that ages me, right? So are you finding, you got to make sure those things stand out. So one of the things, if you're looking for somebody, your social media, but create it in such a way that everybody in your company can post it, that will post that on their social media.
We do like and share competitions, and so we'll email out, especially if it's a position that's hard to recruit for, we'll ask the firm to do a like and share on their social media, and then you go into a drawing for concert tickets or something like that.
That's perfect. And maybe even taking it up to the next notch of saying tell your story about the company, right? Because now this is the thing, get them there first, because it's hard to move too much. But if they were to just share it and say, hey, I love working here. I mean, and obviously they get to do their own, put it in their own words, but and this is where we talk about telling your story. Hey, being at this company has allowed me to do X, Y, Z. Love working for this company because they offer this, that, or the other. If this fits you or somebody that you know, please tell them about it. That's going to have your biggest reach. So again, social media is just one place, but are you telling your story? Let's say that you have somebody at your, that's come to work for you and they've been able to do something they've never been able to do before. Or maybe they've been at other jobs and they just didn't like it, but they love the vibe and the culture at yours, and they've told you this. Do a quick video. Ask them if you can do a quick video. Put that out. Those things matter, and now you're talking to different groups of people. So that's going to be the big piece, is not just depending on like the Indeeds and that type of thing. Now, this is the other thing. Emailing it to all of your vendors, your affiliates. So anybody you do business with, do they know what you're looking for? And it can be as simple as emailing everybody in there a subject line that says, who do you know? Now, again, don't send them that big, long job. I'm not reading it if you send it to me. But But if you give me a breakdown of, hey, I'm looking for an amazing person, they have their counseling degree, or they're this, and they've done this type of thing before, who do you know? Oh my gosh, you should talk to my friend Paige. You should talk to such and such, right? And so, again, making it simple, letting people know what you're looking for, those are sometimes the very best hires that you can get. And then, so we talked about vendors, affiliates, also your database. How many of you guys, even at the banks? Now again, I get that banks are different because there's a lot of rules and things that you have, but if you have the ability to email everybody that banks with you and says, hey, we're hiring, we're growing, we'd love to grow with you. Do you know anybody, or are you looking for a position? Tell them a little bit about it, right? Because the thing is the person that you emailed may not be the person that comes, but they know other people. So again, within your organization, like nobody go back and say, hey, I'm going to do this, and then your boss be like, it's not allowed or whatever. But be thinking about how do we touch more and more people. Now again, not everybody emails, so granted, that's going to be one of the lower pieces, and yet if you have that ability, add that in. And then of course on your social media, don't just do it once. How often are you doing it, and are you changing what you're looking for each time? On your email signature, and probably everybody at your organization, do you have a thing at the bottom of your email signature that says, is this you, or who we're looking for? They could click on and see a list of the job openings. And with potentially, preferably people that are sharing why they love working there. So that could be a great opportunity as well. And now this is the other piece, is make a list of your top affiliates, vendors, friends, people like Kelly here who works at ULM. Make a list of every time you're looking to hire somebody, who do I need to know and have a conversation with? And you're going to say something like this. Obviously you can change this, but it's just, and by the way, find out, do you like to get calls? Do you like text? Do you like email? Again, things get lost in people's email, but depending on if they're looking for something, depends on that relationship you have with them. But you're calling them and hey, this is Olivia Roberts, with Olivia's Approach. The reason I'm calling is to ask for your help. Stop talking. Well, how can I help you? My business is expanding, and we're looking to hire an outstanding person to help us take the business to the next level. And again, you'll rewrite this for this, but you notice it's not like super long, right? It's, I'm looking for somebody that's a self-starter, an organizer, a fast learner, and a great communicator. They have experience as whatever it is that you need to experience. Do you know anyone who might fit this description? Wait for an answer? Awesome. What would be the best way for me to contact them? And you may at this point go, look, they may not be looking for a job, because that person might go, you know who that describes? That describes my cousin, Susie. And you go, well, could would you be offended if I requested, or if I got Susie's information and gave her a call? Why did I say, would you be offended? Because most people are going to say no. So inadvertently, they said yes to giving me her information. But that's tricky. You don't have to do that. But you're just basically, because a lot of time, is it okay if I call them and let them know that you said they may be, that you just think really highly of them and you thought that they might be a fit. Now that person might go, well, Susie loves her job. And you're saying, hey, look, that's awesome. We only want to deal with people that are happy and love their job. Susie, this may not be the right opportunity for Susie, but what we do know is that people hang out with other people that are like them. Susie may know the person that is looking for this opportunity. So there's another way. And then whatever they say, thank you, I really appreciate it. May I also ask you, if you were in my shoes, who you might call to see if they might know a good person? Because before we met Kelly today, if somebody would have asked one of us, or now that we know Kelly, we might, if they were to ask you, you got to know Kelly. There's other people out there that you don't know that if you were to ask somebody like, well, who should I call? They're going to go, oh, you should talk to this person. You should talk to this person. Now you have just that bigger pool of people. Make a list of other people from other companies that have a solid reputation that might be looking for a career change. Now keep this in mind, because sometimes people, some people like recruit, some people don't, but keep this in mind. Let's say that I was gonna go after Kelly and she's happy with her job. Odds are but I know Kelly. I'm gonna talk to her, hey, if there's ever an opportunity, because you're still gonna need to hire somebody in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Look, Kelly, there's a gentleman that I led a training in Oregon. I know that one day we'll be in business together. I have no idea how that's gonna look. That was 5 years ago, but he's on my bench. I know that he's the type of person I wanna be in business with. I don't know if it might be another 20 years. But I know that, so who are those lists of people that you're like, hey, they're amazing at what they do. They're happy. They're not going anywhere. But let me make a bench because I want to at least let them know, hey, you're happy. Be happy. But if at some point you're not, or maybe you meet somebody like you that y'all don't have a role for, let me know about it. So are we having these conversations? Okay, now we're going to talk about these next few pieces. These are the things that can all be done by one of the hiring companies or one of the websites that you can put it in and it goes to everybody. I am going to suggest that we do things a little bit different, because very much like Kelly said, right? People get, Indeed, a lot of them are fake jobs, or it's just a lot of stuff. You can get all of these done before you even see the resume. I'm gonna actually suggest maybe you do it backwards. So whether it's the resume or whatever, but keep it simple. So for instance, a lot of times, my goal when we're looking to hire somebody is we wanna look at least 100 resumes before to call it down. Now, when I say look at, I mean I saw a bunch of, we put it on Indeed, we put it on these other places, I did all these others, and we're gonna sort them. So I haven't asked anybody to do a whole bunch of stuff at this point, and I'm gonna sort them, and I'm gonna sort them in probably just a few different piles. One is they absolutely are not a right fit for what I'm looking for. So I go through those, and there's a couple of things, and you guys probably have some criteria that you look for, right? So let's say I'm looking for a job. Again, it depends on the job, but not counting somebody in college, because a lot of times I'm using they've been in college for 3, 4 years. That's their longevity, right? But if I look at an application and that person is typically every 3 or 4 months, not counting, being in college, because expect college people to have shorter times that they're at jobs, I'm probably going to put them in my no pile. Now, or I'm going to put them in my no pile for now, because depending on the job, maybe I do want somebody that's a shorter term or whatever. But I'm going to put those in my no pile. I'm going to then look at the ones that, I'm going to go through and I'm going to find the ones that actually have a chance of getting the job based on what I can see. Now, that doesn't mean, so I'm going to take that 100, I'm going to narrow them down. So typically out of that 100, I'm going to narrow them down to around 12. Now, is that a magic number? No, that's just what I've seemed to discover. So it might be, sometimes it might be 20, sometimes it might be 4, right? But now we're going to narrow those down. Now it's easier for me to ask those people to do more stuff. And I'm still going to be, now again, all the stuff that I'm going to share, you guys know, you can ask the ND to do all of this up front. But people they're getting kind of, burnt out is the wrong way. Also, it's way easier for me to then go, because I'm a big believer, if we go beyond your resume and I don't choose you, you need to get some type of text, letter, carrier pigeon that says, hey, thanks, but no thanks, right? So it's hard to do that if you're trying to do 100 for one job, right? So you're kind of narrowing it down. So let's say that we narrowed it down. At that point, so we've identified 8 to 10 candidates. Now the top candidates, I'm going to reach out to them and ask them to do either a phone interview because it depends on the job. Either a phone interview, or I might have them, like if it's somebody for marketing, I'm gonna have them send me a video, a quick 3 to 5 minute, less is more, because now everything they do is a test. So I'm looking for intelligence. Skill, yes, but intelligence. So, because this is, and again, this is very simple, but let's say that you say that you're marketing, and I say, okay, great, send me a quick video that tells me a little bit about you and your experience. And you ask me how to email you a video. Do I need to go any further? Because one of two things it tells me is you're not in marketing, or you haven't the experience, or you're not smart enough to go, okay, great, and run over and ask somebody else how to do it, right? So I'm looking for like that level of intelligence. Can you figure things out on your own? Now, again, as appropriate for the role. Do I necessarily care if I'm trying to think of, give me a job that doesn't matter if they know how to do an email or a video email, so again, as appropriate. But that does tell me some things about if we're looking for that type of role. So maybe the video, again, and I'm not looking for, and I'm very clear, I'm not looking for a professional video. This can be from your phone. But I am looking for things like, are they showing up with a smile? Are they, how are they expressing themselves? But again, the biggest piece, if it's a marketing thing and they don't know how to do that. So that, again, you find the thing in your business that would be the test, right? Now, if I'm doing a phone interview, so you mentioned, golly, I thought I had your name down. Daniel? Oh, yeah, okay. So you mentioned, Daniel, you wanted to get better at asking the questions. So this is an example of 34 questions. Do not ask all 34, please. Write that down, highlight it. You're going to pick, and you can almost use these as like memory joggers or to write your own. You're going to pick in that phone interview, you're going to do like a 15-minute phone interview, and you're going to pick somewhere like 3 or 4 questions that you're going to ask. So you're looking for how did they answer the phone? Because that's how they're going to answer the phone at work, right? Like things to that effect. If they, but pick 3 or 4 and get to know like what matters about that role. Because we don't want it, because like this is where that behind the scenes piece. If I asked you, are you good at Excel? If you're smart at all, what are you going to tell me? Yep. Even if you don't even know what Excel is, right? And I don't blame you for that, right? Because it makes sense. You're smart. You want the job. That's okay. Like again, but that's okay. But so we want to ask them questions. It's kind of the same thing if I asked you, like, are you great at time management? And you were looking to get a job? Absolutely. But how can I ask that question so I find out if that's really who you are? Now, again, that time management thing only matters in certain jobs, but where does that apply? I might come in here and say, okay, let's say that culture is super important to me. I might ask the question, again, hey, how are you doing? You don't jump into the hard one first. Do you mind sharing with me, what's the worst supervisor you ever worked with? Now, some people are going to go, oh, I've always had great supervisors. And you're going to go, okay, well, I appreciate that. Because again, sometimes people think that what we're waiting to see if they complain. And that's not what this is about. So you might go, okay, so you had all 10s. Of the 10s, like they were amazing. Which one had the biggest opportunity for growth? What was it about them okay, and then they say, how did you handle that? That's really the where that I want is how did you handle that? And it might be, so I've got a family member everybody loves him as a boss, but he has ADHD off like squirrel. So every month they have a new direction we're headed, right? So they might say something like, every month, we were always changing. Well, how did you handle that? That's what I'm looking for. So whenever, he said, hey, we're going to do this, what I learned was to say, okay, hey, this is what you had told me. Now what do you want me to keep doing over here and stop doing over here? Now that lets me know that they know how to communicate, right? So things to that effect. So just, what are the few questions that you're asking them? to see if, so you think about that funnel. So we had the 100, we narrowed it down to the 10 to 12. And again, some jobs, you might not even have it narrowed down to 10 or 12 because there's not that many people that would fit that role, right? And then you narrow it down. Now we're gonna do the phone interview or a video interview or something to that effect. Now we've narrowed them down. Now I'm only having to actually meet with the top 3 or 4. So even though, so that's going to save you some time and them some time. And now when we get down to the top 3 or 4, 5, 6, depending, there's no magic number about the 3 or 4. Now that might be where I ask them, I want them to do a little bit more. Like, sometimes it's as simple as, type and test, like depending on the role. But, or something more complicated if that's what their role is for, right? So be thinking about that, but now I'm only asking a smaller amount of people that I actually have to spend more time with. Yeah. So that's, again, and then there's or that might be the person. Again, you can do this in Indeed and those other sites. You can have them do a video in there and a phone interview and all those types of things. You might still have them do it in there, but narrow it down first. It'll save you time and them time because you're not going to want to go back and you don't want to listen. If you're just looking at the Indeed applications, it takes you, 20 minutes to cipher. But if you're trying to listen to 100 people's voicemail and watch 100 people's video, or even 10, you're like, just narrow that so you don't have to do that, except for these people have a possibility of in the role. And then they have this, but I'm a big fan of, when I say basic skills quiz, it is basic. You would create your own terms of basic, right? Because what you might consider basic in your field might be like, in somebody else's, it might be like high level, right? So whatever your basic is. But let's say this was like a first time, EA, or maybe it's the teller. Where's the capitalization? Where's the salutation? Maybe it's a spelling test type thing. They just fill this in. Can you alphabetize? Can you do simple math? Now, again, all this is very, very simple. So I'm not saying but again, yours may not be this simple just because that role, right? But whatever's the simple for that role. Proofreading test. Now this is now this is my favorite. Is create 1, 2, or 3, because again, this is all about now it's into how they think, right? So create 1 to 3 different scenarios that you're going to give them to see how they think in that role. So remember we said we're hiring talent and then we want to, cultivate and train to refine. So what are those questions that you can ask somebody that that they have some sense or they can do that piece, right? Now, again, interesting enough, and this probably sounds weird, but I don't care about the correct answer because they're not in the role yet. What I do care is, are they somebody that thinks, right? Because that's what we're trying to do, because it's harder for me to teach you how to think than teach you how to do this particular job. So one of the ones this is probably my favorite is, this person or Marcia has asked you to create these 2 packets. Paul has asked you to do 2. Based on your job description that all 4 have equal value and that it has to be done that Wednesday, the evening. Then somebody else asked for something else. Now it's Wednesday. These 2 people that asked for that expect it, they're out. And then you're doing all these other things, and then somebody calls you and says, hey, I just locked myself out. They're 30 minutes away. What do you do? Now, again, use something that would be applicable to what their role is, but maybe you're the teller and and you're like, okay, you've got, 5 people waiting. Somebody just had a wreck in the teller solution and the manager just got sick and had to go home. What do you do? Well, I tell everybody, hey, folks, we'll be with you as soon as possible. We had this, and then you call the right, stuff like that. We just, again, are they able to think? Now, they might have, whatever they said, you might go, that is not our policy. Not a big deal, because we can teach them the policy, but they know how to think, because we want to find out if they're going to freeze, now versus later, right? Okay, so I'm gonna pause here because I know that we just covered kind of a bunch of pieces. And again, I imagine that a lot of you guys already have a lot of or most of this. Any takeaways, thoughts, or questions about when we looked at the hiring steps this way? Good, bad, ugly? Anything you're going to do different based on this conversation?
I think I've got just some ideas, and some of it's from what some others said, like text communication, because I think that's definitely something, especially with the frontline positions, it's usually that younger generation. I mean, even myself, my personal email is a hot mess.
Yeah.
I don't really touch her. Just
That's the one that I give out when the stores ask me for an email address.
Right. So some things like that, different things like you're talking about the internal email signatures and having a link down there with like job postings and things like that, especially outside of our department with lenders and things like that.
Yes.
We touch a lot of customers and stuff, so just little things like that.
Yeah, perfect. All right, anybody else? And it's absolutely okay to say that the best thing you got was what Kelly shared. That's really one of the greatest things about classes, things like this, is sometimes you do get something from us up here, but a lot of times you just from each other. That's a huge opportunity just to network with one another as well. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to get to the fun part, and that is the multi-generational leadership. By the way, if you did want any of those questions or anything, there is a QR code. You can scan that. It's a Google Drive link. You can get it. When it comes up, if you do use it, instead of having don't send me an email that says give me access to this, just make a copy of it. And then you can edit, change it, get rid of what you don't want, keep what you do, whatever. Okay, so now let's look at multi-generational leadership. Now this part is fun because well, there we go. This part's fun because I think we kind of get to see ourselves in this a whole lot and how we show up. The first thing that I'm asking you guys to do, go ahead where it says generational breakdown on that multi-generation leadership, identify which one you are. If you don't know, it does have the years beside each one. Identify which one you are. And then we're going to look from there to that. Do we have that 100-day training plan for when somebody comes on? Are we setting them up? And then that's where we'll wrap up. Okay, so multi-generational. Again, generational leadership, there's an example or the definition in your material, but basically it just says it's the concept that the people you live contemporaneously, I can't say that word, contemporaneously, whether you knew them or not, they were in your generation and very similar era, very similar beliefs. You watch the same type of commercials and that type of thing, right? So the generations who are currently in our workforce, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, right? So anybody under 27 is a Gen Z. So those are your 23s, 24s, that type of thing. So 25% of the workforce is millennials, 33% Gen X, and Gen Z is entering the workplace just a little bit later. So this is the interesting thing. So baby boomers. I hadn't thought of this, but baby boomers, so 60 to 78, they lived through the civil rights movement, women's rights movement, disability rights movement, growing number of women actually entering the workforce. They don't have the highest divorce rates, but that's where we started seeing divorce rates increase. They experienced the beginning of the hippie culture, the drug culture, and there was a huge growth in healthcare because of things like the polio vaccine, that type of thing. So they had more advanced healthcare than previous. They typically moved out of their parents' house about 18. They typically were married by 20. They were the emergence of the strongest middle class. Now, this is the interesting thing. So they all had analog phones. How many of you guys, I love, like you've seen that TikTok thing? When you say, like, if you're going to mimic holding a phone, how many of you guys do it this way? How many of you do it this way? Yeah, that tells you your age, right? Because if you never picked up one of those. But even think about, like, can you imagine handing somebody that's really young one of those? My grandma used to have one that you twirled. I don't know what that is. They're generally very independent and confident, self-reliant. They're the first rejection to reject traditional values. I didn't think about that but baby boomers were, right? Like, I don't think of it that way, but they were the first ones to start rejecting the traditional values. They were the first generation of workaholics. So typically you lived to work. You didn't just work to pay your bills or like to have that work-life balance. They was the first generation of workaholics. They very goal and achievement oriented. They grew up with increased educational and financial opportunities, and many learn new skills even as they reach to retirement age. They are competitive and equate work with self-worth and enjoy competing in the workplace. That actually helped me think about, like, my mom. She's 74, she's retired, and she's still like upset because she didn't wake up at 6:30 in the morning. I'm like, why would you wake up at 6:30 in the morning? Like, you don't have to, but it's because, like, you're supposed to, right? It's that supposed to. So how do we motivate a baby boomer? Face-to-face communication. Treat them as an equal. How do they like to be supervised? They do think of, like top down or, okay, you're in this role, I'm in this role. Do not micromanage. Now, interesting enough, we see that across all areas. One of the big pieces that we found that works really well, like when we hire somebody, we tend to think, and this doesn't matter about the age, but because we see this in every generation, a good part of that 100-day training is if you let them know at the very beginning, you might feel a bit micromanaged because you're going to be with me, you're going to be reading what I read, we're going to be talking, because that way that you know how I think, so that you know how we want things to go. So at the very beginning, there's going to be a lot of control or micromanaging, right? Then as you learn more, my control goes down. And you can set specific like pieces for that, but a lot of times, especially if you have a role where that is like, they're going to feel micromanaged for a little bit because it like this, that, or the other, let them know where or how that's, and it just gives people like freedom to breathe a bit, to go, oh, okay, this isn't forever. This is for this reason. Okay, so, valuing them. How do you value a boomer? You acknowledge their hard work. Leverage their knowledge and experience. Offer opportunities for them to lead tasks. So if you have somebody, maybe a boomer that works with you right now, then you're like, maybe you're struggling, maybe you're younger and you're struggling. Think about, are you doing some of those things with them? Maybe a great opportunity for them to feel part of the team and feel more valued. Boomers do value tradition and structure. They want to be mentors. And again, now is everybody an individual? Yes. So we're talking, so you might have somebody that doesn't, but if we talk with the whole group, a lot of them do value opportunities to update and learn new skills. Then you've got Gen X. So that's 44 years old to 59. So they were born between 64 and 80. They experienced Roe versus Wade, Watergate, the Rodney King riots, Columbine shootings, the AIDS epidemic, the dot-com boom in the 90s to early 2000s. They are the smallest generation. If you look at, perhaps due to like birth control was introduced in the 60s, and so there was a declining birth rate. But to take the inverse of that, then they saw growth because the immigration rates grew during that time period. So that generation is more so than maybe previous generations are more ethnically and culturally diverse. They grew up with cable television, personal computers, early stages of the internet, so like Oregon Trail, depending on where you're at. A lot of them were latchkey kids, or both parents worked, so they just came home when the street lights, went off. More divorced parents than the generation before them. Highly educated, 29% of Gen X obtained a bachelor's degree, which is 6% more than the baby boomer generation. They value work flexibility, and almost a quarter of them have been with the same employer for 15 plus years. They prefer a more casual supervision style from a boss who invests in them personally. Now, if we move to, the work-life balance is key to a Gen X. They're very independent. They are products of work-centric parents. A lot of the millennials and Gen X are part of that work, the ones, the baby boomers were their parents, so they do have a great work ethic. So, be cognizant. I think sometimes, people, the millennials, this, that, they don't. And I'm like, most millennials have kids now. They have, so they are typically work hard. It just might look different to like a boomer, because they may want the flexibility. Like they want to get out of work and go see their kids' thing at school. They're not going to miss it. No, they're perfectly happy working at home at 8:00 at night. I'm not saying don't take advantage of anybody, but so that you just have the flexibility is important. This was interesting. Gen X is really skeptical. I think about Facebook and all the posts, and I'm like, oh, those are the Gen Xers. Now I can say the Gen Xers, they're doing that. But they grew up in a time of financial uncertainty in the 80s, and young adults, older adults, they experienced the housing crisis of 2009. They can be critical of being taken advantage of compared to the previous generations. Gen X wants to work to live versus live to work. They want balance now, not when they retire. They enjoy informality and humor in the workplace. They want immediate and honest feedback. They are pretty tech savvy, and they're very comfortable with new and changing technology. Inspiring, so how do you inspire and motivate them? So number one, communication, less formal, casual communication. Allow them time to figure out interdependently and then process solutions. Supervision, care about their personal goals and ambitions. Make sure that your ultimate vision is aligned with theirs. There was actually, how many of you guys have read, I think it's called no, it's not the Dream Manager. There was a company that was having a problem keeping employees, and they were janitorial service, and it was, does this book sound familiar to anybody? But janitorial service, they couldn't keep people, and so not only janitorial service, but they worked at nights. And he was like, well, what can I do? Like, we're hiring, we're going, so what they figured out is what was important to these people. And a lot of them were either, some of them were immigrants, some of them working their way through school, et cetera. So they found out what was important to them. And remember I said sometimes the pay may not come from the actual job. They started figuring out how to support them in getting to school. They figured out it was that sometimes people wanted the job, but it was a lack of transportation issue. They solved those problems, and then they had people stayed for super long time, right? And when they did leave, it was it was exciting because they had achieved that college goal, or they had. So sometimes are we looking outside of the box there? Care about what's important to them. Seek fun and innovation, supervisors who trust them and value their independence. Valuing them, create opportunities for advancement, reward them with free time and flexible schedules. So that's the other piece. Sometimes, obviously, when I say money's here, right? I'm not working for here because you give me flexible, but let's say that all else is equal, the money, that we're happy with the money, if you can offer me some flexibility, or this generation some flexibility, that's where they're gonna, that's a lot of times that's their love language, quote unquote, right? They also appreciate a diverse staff, team, and environment. All right, now let's look at millennials, 81 to 2000. So these people are 28 to 43. So the youngest millennials around 28, the oldest at 43. They grew up in the rise of social media and smartphones. They experienced the war in Iraq, a huge amount of college debt in this generation. Online dating has become the normal. An increase in school and mass shootings as they were growing up, and they also saw the first African-American president. As employees, they generally are open-minded and collaborators and aspire genuinely to enjoy their job and the people they work with. Millennials will leave because, quote unquote, the vibes are off. So you got to figure out what is the vibes, right? What is that? Because they will. Now this is the interesting thing. Millennials are less likely to stay in the same job longer than 3 years. Now, as leaders, we can go, well, them dang millennials, and I am one, like I'm the latest one. But really, instead, as leaders, we can't fight it. It is what it is. We got to go, okay, how do we get the job done and create the work-life balance that they want? What does that look like? You see like Netflix and some other companies, and I work with a few companies. I'm a big believer in this, where now again, this is going to be different if you have to be at the job. Like a doctor, you got to be you got to be there, right? For those particular hours. But maybe, but let's say that you have somebody that, did an amazing job, or they, whatever, and you can go, you know what? We're going to pay you for today, but you get to go half a day. That's what, so are you speaking their language? Because a lot of times that's where millennials leave. They are the people that the leadership above them are wanting them to behave like the only thing that matters is the job. Now, the flip side of that, I can think of two, like there's a lot of them, and some of you guys probably in this room, but I know millennials that work way more than boomers. Because they're always accessible, right? You can call them, you can email them, all that. The difference is they don't necessarily want to work in these four walls all day. So they want to be here. They want to go see their kid do this. They want to do this. And they're working at 8 o'clock at night. And sometimes you're like, oh, don't do that. But they're like, no, this works for me because I got to go do that thing. So where do you need to be flexible with that generation? So again, why do most millennials exit the jobs? And so we're just going to spend a couple more minutes on them because that's the biggest workforce right now. Main reason, poor work environment and culture. What are you doing to create a good culture? They like to hang out with each other. They like to talk. A lot of it is they like to hang out with each other even outside of work. What are you doing to create that? They will also leave a job if there's a lack of support or mentoring or incompatible management style, and if lack of compensation or benefits, or, and this is the interesting thing, no clear path of promotion. Start talking to your people about a clear path of promotion. Now, that don't mean it has to be that day, but 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, like what's next steps for you? Sometimes it might even be outside of your organization, and that's okay. Because let's say if you're like, you know what, if you guys, you're amazing at this, and you go, okay, that means I have them for 5 years. How do I set them up so they want to stay with me those whole 5 years, because that's going to get them closer to what they want to do. They are not interested in traditional hierarchies. I typically, if I'm talking to a millennial, because I know this works for me, you know how, so typically like you have or an organizational chart. And so like, hey, this is your boss and this is you. Wait, over me, right? Like so I always tell them, the way I drew this out this way because that's the only way that I can draw, but I want you to imagine this is a baseball field. In professional baseball, maybe in little kids, but that professional baseball, that right fielder is no more important than that pitcher. Because I don't care how good your pitcher is, if your right fielder's terrible. So it's not top down, it's drawn that way, but it's actually this role, whether it is the admin or the sales or whatever, that role can't win without this role. So we're like a baseball team. That role is so important. And that means a lot when you're talking to a millennial. So practical stages for working with people. Adopt versus trying to change your workforce. Ensure we are leaders that are adapting. I mentioned earlier cross mentorship, flexible work arrangements when necessary or when able, right? Because again, not every job can, but how could that job be flexible? And then recognition patterns. So again, with millennials and Gen Xers, but especially millennials, we want constant feedback. Now, I don't mean constant feedback like, oh, you're doing a good job. Great, great, great. No. Hey, that was great. That didn't work. Let's not do that again. In the moment, don't let me go 90 days and then go, hey, you know what? You're not making the cut. Why didn't you? I could have fit, right? So that constant feedback of, hey, that you nailed that. Keep doing that. Hey, let's talk about that. How can we do that different? So that's what we mean by, so like most millennials are 100% okay for you to say, hey, like, that was not good. Now, I do think of it, you gotta have the care and candor. So if we've got a great culture and I know that you care about me, you can pretty much, think about your best friends. They can pretty much call you out and say like things that nobody else could say to you because you're gonna go like, that kind of hurts my feelings, but there's probably some truth in it. You want to do the same thing with those people in that millennial generation and even the Gen Xers that you're managing or hiring, because it's very much the same. Like constant feedback. Hey, that was great. That fell short. What can we do different? Don't wait 90 days and say like, oh, that didn't work. Why didn't you tell me? I thought it was. Again, and we grew up kind of an instant society, right? Think about, and it's going to be even more so with the Generation Alphas that are entering the 23-year-olds. Because if you think about it, most of us at some point or another played video games or whatnot. But if you play a video game, you get feedback right then. You get better or you get worse, you die, you lose, right? So making sure that you have that built in, and as leaders that we're comfortable with that. Because I think sometimes as leaders we forget because we might get uncomfortable with it. So just making it part of the environment. And if you have maybe a boomer in your organization, making sure that they understand this so that they can have constant feedback where they might go, well, I only needed somebody to tell me once a year, and you're like, yeah, it's not, we got to adapt to them, and they want that constant feedback. So, I know we went through that kind of quickly, but I want to hear from you guys when you think about that generational breakdown. I don't know. Thoughts? Did anything hit you and you realize like, oh yeah, that's how I am? Or, wow, I didn't know it was because I was a millennial or a Gen Xer that I thought that way.
I feel like I just see it in the workforce in general, because I work with a lot of like the baby boomers and some Gen X. And then a lot of the people under me are the millennials and the Gen Zs, and I can kind of relate to them a little bit more. And them being from that workforce generation of just show up and work.
Yeah, like, oh, you lost an arm and a leg, you better be here. Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
right. And they have, their values are different. They value more time at home, or they went to college, or they're expecting to come in and get these things, and just helping them see both sides of it and get each other's perspective. I've noticed it's different.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And I'm a huge believer in the more we spend time with people that are different than us, the better we all are, because it gets us that different perspective. So maybe, like, how do we get that? Because like you said, you work with both, so you can kind of see everything. So how do we get more of our boomers with our, even Generation Alpha? And so that, because it's one of those things, it's real easy for me to not like somebody if I think of you guys as a collective. Monroe, West Monroe. People, it always amazes me, and I'm like, and please, if you guys have done this, please stop. We'll have somebody move in. We had a pastor at our church one time, not the pastor, but another one, and they were like, well, should we just live in West Monroe? Because everybody says Monroe's horrible. And I'm like, hold on. I said, there's just been a rivalry since it started. There's a great place to live everywhere. Don't do that. Because we've also had vice versa. Somebody said, I love Monroe, and I think West Monroe, the way they talk about West Monroe's horrible. And I'm like, quit doing that, because guess what? You know that we do that, and sometimes people don't move here because somebody has told them all this horrible stuff about this, that, or the other. I'm not saying lie to somebody, but just because you prefer this street over this street, like, There's great things about everything. So I think the same thing applies with the younger or an older. If I look at it as a collective, I can say all the old, baby boomers are, none of them are good at technology. But it's awesome. So maybe find the baby boomer that's great at technology and have them teach a class. Or challenge them to teach something, right? That the younger people wouldn't know how to do. And then, okay, now we're individuals and a lot of that stuff goes away. So, but I think that's huge.
I think we're experiencing this in accounting as an industry as a whole. It's, your older workforce has set these reputation of what accounting looks like. And these younger workers are looking at it and going, I don't want to do that. And so you've got fewer and fewer people that are choosing accounting, fewer that are choosing public accounting. And so our firm, I think, is doing a great job of going, all right, well, then we need to change. We can't keep doing what we did 50 years ago and expect the workforce that's entering to want to stay.
Yeah.
But I think that's huge that, there's clearly different motivators.
That's
and so we can't expect someone to stay past 2 to 5 years if things are done the way that they were done.
That's right.
With the older workforce.
That's right. And so that's where so telling that story is going to be so huge. So when y'all, hey guys, we know the traditional, accountant looked like this. This is what, so telling that story, not just to college, because that's the other thing you'll see. And I'm going to say this, and this is a hypothetical maybe, but I bet a lot of the people that are going to accounting are going immediately to maybe open their own firms versus work for somebody. Not because they're probably happy to work for somebody, but because they think we got to do this. So that may give you an opportunity, if that's the case, to speak to that with the people that are coming out of college and things to that effect, yeah? Or even telling that story to the people that maybe are struggling, but they're doing it on their own only because I didn't want to go work for the man, and you're telling that story and you get a different experience. I think that's huge. Yeah, okay. Okay, so at the beginning of class, I asked that you guys write something down that you were looking to take away from this class. That you would say, okay, this was made, good use of my time. I got to eat some good lunch and I took this one thing away. Look at that, see if we covered it. And then I'd love for you to write an aha. What's something that, and it doesn't have to be something that you took away from me, but something that you got today. And then the last question on the bottom is going to say, what are you going to do with that aha? So a lot of times we go, okay, I remember this, or I learned this, or oh, I'm going to go do this. If we write it down, it's more likely to happen. And then if we decide that next first step, so that's what I mean. So what's your aha? And then what's that next first step? And it doesn't have to be I'm going to revamp everything. No. I'm going to, it could be just, hey, I'm going to have a conversation with somebody. Hey, I'm going to go read some more about generational. Hey, what is that next piece? So I'd like to hear from a couple of you guys. What is, you can say yes or no, right? Do you, So Daniel, you get to, I'm not trying to pick on you, but you get to be the first one. Do you feel better about having some questions for the interview process?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now one thing that we didn't was that hire, write, or maintain. If you'll leave me your information, I will share with you a 100-day training plan. It will absolutely not work for your business. What I mean by that, but it'll have you can use that as an outline to create it. The biggest thing that I can share with everybody for that, if you don't have a 100-day training plan, super important. And when I say 100, because sometimes people hear you're on 90-day probation or whatever, it shouldn't take you 90 days to know whether this person's going to be a great fit. No, every week, I'm actually a big fan of every week we play red light, green light, and sometimes yellow light. And what that means is you're going to ask yourself, based on where this person is, because I would ask a different question on week 1 versus week 6, right? But on week 1, I'm going to do a one-on-one with them or whoever's their direct supervisor. Hey, what did you learn? What do you need? Give them that feedback of, hey, you did this great. But based on where they are, I'm going to flip that over and I'm going to ask myself, do they get a red light or a green light? Red light means they didn't do good this week. Now, sometimes red light means it's their first week and they missed 2 days. I'm going to give them a red light. They did everything else great, but and missed 2 days, if I need them physically here, or even though they were at home, they were sick. Now, that doesn't mean fire them. That just is, that's a red light. Week 2, hey, everything that I needed them to do or they needed to learn, they nailed it. A green light. Let's say week 3, you're and we've all had this, I don't know why, but they're just, I'm gonna give them a yellow. They weren't terrible, but they weren't great. But I can't put my finger on them. Give them a yellow. Now what I'm gonna do, because just human nature, we feel lots of times we feel like somebody has been in the role way longer than they have. So we start treating them that way and we forget they're newer. Or just that span of time goes by and we forget that, let's say they're in the second, almost the third month, they're 70 days. You forgot that the 2 months before they missed 4 days, 2 days each month, right? Well, if you're doing that red light, green light, and just making it very simple, every week you write it, and you're seeing week 1, week 2, and you go, you know what? I can't put my finger on it. Sometimes it's blatant, we know they're not, but I can't put my finger on it, but they've literally got a yellow light, 4 yellow lights. They're not a good fit. It may be, maybe the first or second yellow light, I go, okay, is it how I'm teaching them? Is it how I'm training them? What can I do differently? But if that continues, you go, it's just not a good fit. No harm, no foul. You have that conversation, we're done. If there's red, and I'm a big, you're going to decide in your field, but typically it's somewhere if I get 2 reds, you're probably, that's not a fit. Because I'm not judging you on what I expect you for 90 days. I'm judging you based on what it would make sense to reasonably to be here. And we've had the conversation and it didn't change, or we couldn't. So, and then, okay, hey, we got a bunch of greens. That's fun, right? And so that to me is one great way of doing that 100-day. And then if every week you're asking them, what did you learn this week? How did you feel? What skills did you learn? What do you still need to learn to be successful in this role? Sometimes people are well, I don't know, because they really don't know what's next. But if you're following that 100-day plan, that will help you do that. And, but a lot of times they'll tell you, hey, I feel really good about this, but whenever I go to do this, it just feels wonky. And you go, okay, now I know what to train you on next week. Or, hey, this other person does really great at that in that division. Go hang out with them for a day or so. And they go, oh, I got it. Right? So things to that effect. But I will be happy to share that with you. Fit better screening. I know that was one that a few of you, was there something that you picked up today that could help you screen better?
Absolutely.
Okay, very cool. And then enhanced recruiting techniques to get to the qualified. How do we do on that one?
We just got some more ideas of how to reach more people or reach the right people.
Yeah.
Or talked about people might know.
Yeah.
It might not be them, but they might know the right person or something
Yes.
in that field.
Absolutely. And the clearer you are on what that person looks like and their behavior, and I don't mean look oh, they're pretty or not, or brown hair, but like that role, I need somebody that is detail oriented. What does that mean? So a good example of my favorite like detail, like let's say this person's gonna build systems in your business. Do you know how hard it is to teach somebody to build a system? I don't even know if it's possible. Now you can teach them to follow a system, but to teach somebody to build a system, so to say, hey, I need somebody to build systems, remember we talked about those questions we're gonna ask them? I'm gonna say, when you have a problem, how do you solve it? I'm listening for, does that person talk in systems? Because if you ask them, are you good at systems, they might not, depending on their role, they may not have thought of it that way. But I've got a buddy, even with her kids, she has a system. Like you go, tell me, what's happening this week? She's gonna pull out her appointment book and she's gonna say, hey, we have, this at this time, this at this time, this is what time I'm gonna cook supper, and I gotta buy and she'll I'm gonna go buy groceries and I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and that. Like she thinks systems. She can't not think systems. So what is it that you're hiring for? Because now it's easier to tell somebody, I need somebody that's detail oriented. What does that mean in this position? I need somebody that when they look at a spreadsheet, they immediately can see that it's out of line. Or if it's a marketing thing, I need somebody to look at something and go, doesn't even look right. Because you can take somebody else, say maybe an accountant, he's gonna be, oh, that's perfect. Because everything is lined up straight. But a marketer person go, but nobody's gonna see it because it doesn't wow them, it doesn't jump, So those are the things that you're looking for, not that you can't train, but some of that, depending on, what level they're entering the role, that's the expectation, they come there. I always like the saying, my intent, I don't ever wanna hire, my intent is to, whatever role I hire somebody for, they should be better at it than I am. So if you hire a marketing person, that's your next person, they should teach you stuff. And if they can't, they're probably not the right person, unless you're like the marketing person, and then, right? But if you hire somebody to build a system and you have to teach them how to build systems, that ain't the right person. So keep that in mind as well. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not gonna teach them how your organization thinks, et cetera. So I know a lot of times when I come into an organization to help with systems and hiring, the first thing I do is just go to their meetings, talk to people, look at things, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that system might work for that company. And yet, so you have to know that, but you got to be able to do that thing. So are we sure that they can do that thing? So, okay. Well, that's a wrap then. Thank you guys for your attention. I trust that you got something good for today. I know if nothing else, we all have Kelly's, that's a big, big tip. Oh, one more thing you may be able to answer. What about people that work with, do you happen to know interns? Would we also talk to you about interns?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a huge opportunity as well. Groom them within your business. I had a 16-year-old kid that came to work for me. He was at West Monroe High. He worked for me, and then he worked for my family, between us, until he was 30. And he's awesome. And he literally started out 2 hours a day, because he's like, I'd rather come work for you than have to go work at, whatever else. And he would come in 2 hours a day, and he would just check email. And then he started running signs, and then he started doing this and that. And so, but yeah, if you can't marry them or birth them, grow up with them, have them grow up within your organization. That can be a huge thing too. So, all right. So thank you very much. You guys have an amazing day. If I can be of any service, my email is in there. Matter of fact, if you'll do this, so if there's something that I went over today that you'd like to receive that I said, hey, I'll send it to you, send me an email. And that way, because that's the other thing about having an amazing assistant, my admin knows where everything is, and she'll get it to you because she'll see it and send it right to you. So, but yeah, anything that you guys need or anything, just shoot me an email, and I appreciate your time. All right, thank you. Y'all have a good one.